There is a lie hidden in every marina. From the dock, every yacht looks like wealth. Polished fiberglass, teak decks, champagne on the aft deck, a captain in white standing at attention. To the average person, a yacht is already the finish line. But inside the world of serious money, a yacht is not one object. It is a financial hierarchy, a floating caste system, and the difference between the man who looks rich and the man who can bend shipyards, ports, crews, and governments around his schedule. That is why yacht brands matter, not because a logo makes the boat faster, but because each brand sits on a different financial cliff. Some brands sell the dream of escape to new millionaires. Others sell architectural discretion to families with generational capital. And at the very top, a handful of shipyards build objects so expensive that the purchase price is only the first chapter of financial destruction. The purchase price is the cheapest part. The real question is not who can buy the yacht. The real question is who can keep feeding it after the cameras leave, after the delivery ceremony ends, after the first summer is over, and after the first seven-figure maintenance invoice arrives. This is the real ladder of the ocean. 15 yacht brands that separate millionaires from billionaires. Before the brands, understand the math. In yachting, there are three worlds. Production yachts are built in series. The shipyard designs the model, standardizes the hull, repeats the layout, and sells variations of the same platform to many owners. This is the world of the successful doctor, the real estate developer, the corporate executive, the first-time rich buyer who wants the keys quickly and the status immediately. The advantage is speed and price control. The disadvantage is depreciation. Production boats can lose value brutally because the market can compare them against newer models, broker inventory, engine hours, dated interiors, financing pressure, and every newer design that makes last year's yacht feel old. In this tier, the owner thinks about the purchase price. The smart owner thinks about resale. Semi-custom yachts are different. The hull platform may already exist, but the owner begins to shape the interior, materials, layout, beach club, owner's suite, tender garage, and technical package. The buyer is no longer just buying a boat, he is buying a controlled version of individuality. This is where the $10 million problem becomes a $30 million problem, because every personal choice becomes permanent cost. Full custom yachts are another universe. The owner begins with a blank sheet of paper and a naval architecture team. Every meter is negotiated. Every system adds weight. Every extra cabin creates crew requirements. Every pool, elevator, submarine garage, helicopter deck, gym, spa, hospital room, cinema, and security system becomes part of the operating burden forever. Capital expenditure is the check that buys the yacht. Operating expenditure is the wound that never closes. The old rule says a yacht can cost about 10% of its purchase price every year to run. On a $2 million boat, that is painful. On a $200 million yacht, that is a private company with engines. Crew salaries, insurance, fuel, dockage, maintenance, surveys, refit work, paint, generators, tenders, replacement parts, satellite communications, interior staff, management fees, compliance, food, wine, uniforms, and security all become part of the same machine. The yacht does not care whether the stock market had a bad year, the invoices arrive anyway. And the hidden number is not just length, it is gross tonnage. Length tells the public how dramatic the yacht looks in photographs. Gross tonnage tells the accountant how much internal volume exists to cool, power, crew, insure, clean, certify, and maintain. A yacht with huge interior volume becomes a hotel. A hotel needs staff. Staff need cabins. Cabins need systems. Systems need engineers. Engineers need budgets. Then comes location. In Monaco, Saint-Tropez, Miami, Nassau, Portofino, or St. Barths, the berth itself becomes a status asset. During peak events, the right dock position can cost more than a normal family spends on a house, and for the largest yachts, availability is not just expensive, it is physically limited. A billionaire can own the boat and still discover that the harbor is too small for his ego. Sea Ray is the gateway drug. Born from the rise of American fiberglass boating, it represents the first moment when a successful person stops renting boats and starts saying, "We keep ours at the marina." The typical buyer is not a billionaire. He may be a surgeon, a dealership owner, a contractor, a corporate vice president, or a retiree with a strong investment account. Entry costs can range from hundreds of thousands of dollars to well over $1 million for larger express cruisers and sport boats. Annual running costs can still reach tens of thousands, and for larger models, more than $100,000 when storage, maintenance, insurance, fuel, and marina fees are included. Financially, Sea Ray separates the upper-middle-class boater from the true yacht owner. It is the place where many people learn the first rule of the ocean. The boat may be affordable, but the lifestyle is not. Sea Ray is not about hiding from the world. It is about joining the visible boating class. It is the first badge, the first payment, the first dock slip, and often the first painful lesson in depreciation. Azimut is where the millionaire fantasy becomes international. Founded in Italy, Azimut mastered the art of mass luxury yachting, enough design to feel exotic, enough production scale to make ownership reachable for the rich, and enough brand recognition to impress people who know boats only from social media. The typical Azimut buyer may have $10 million to $50 million in net worth. He wants Italian design, large windows, social spaces, and the feeling that his money has crossed from success into glamour. The entry cost can begin around $1 million for smaller models and climb past $10 million for larger yachts. But the economics are unforgiving. Larger Azimuts can require professional crew, serious fuel budgets, and annual ownership costs reaching hundreds of thousands or more. The financial analysis is simple. Azimut sells the dream of looking richer than the purchase price. But because it is still a production brand, resale value depends heavily on model year, condition, engine hours, and how quickly the next generation of sleeker models makes yours look old. People buy Azimut because they want the visual language of wealth now. It is the yacht equivalent of a luxury penthouse with mirrored glass, powerful, attractive, and slightly dangerous if the owner confuses appearance with liquidity. Sunseeker is British flash, fast lines, aggressive profile, cinematic masculinity. For decades, it has carried the emotional residue of spy films, power, speed, and men who want their wealth to enter the harbor before they do. The typical buyer is often a high-income entrepreneur or multimillionaire who does not want to look quiet. He wants speed, profile, and drama. A Sunseeker can cost from a few $1 million to tens of millions for larger yachts. Annual running costs can move from hundreds of thousands into the millions when crew, fuel, maintenance, and Mediterranean usage are involved. The financial truth of Sunseeker is that performance has a tax. Fast yachts burn fuel. Sporty layouts can sacrifice volume. Flashy design ages quickly when tastes shift. The buyer is not only purchasing transportation, he is purchasing a public identity. That identity says, "I did not make money to be invisible." And that is precisely why Sunseeker belongs in the millionaire playground. It is often bought by people who want the yacht to announce them. A billionaire may enjoy a Sunseeker as a toy, but rarely as the main statement. At the top of wealth, noise becomes unnecessary. Princess is a different kind of signal. Founded in Plymouth, England, Princess carries less nightclub energy than Sunseeker and more corporate polish. It appeals to the millionaire who wants luxury without looking reckless, the executive who prefers a sharper suit to a louder watch. The typical buyer may be worth $20 million to $100 million. Entry costs often begin in the low millions and can climb into the tens of millions for larger models. Annual costs can range from hundreds of thousands to several million depending on size, crew, location, and usage. The financial psychology is restraint. Princess buyers often want a rational luxury asset. The yacht still depreciates, the yacht still burns cash, but the owner can tell himself the decision was sensible because the brand feels engineered, tasteful, and practical. princess is wealth with a boardroom voice. That is its power. It does not scream billionaire. It says established millionaire. It says the owner has money but also a finance department in his head. The problem is that the ocean does not reward restraint forever. Above a certain size, every yacht becomes irrational. Ferretti is the multi-millionaire standard. Founded by the Ferretti brothers, the brand grew from Italian boating culture into a polished symbol of international yacht ownership. It does not feel as loud as Sunseeker or as entry-level as Sea Ray. It feels like the owner has graduated. The typical Ferretti buyer may have $30 million to $200 million in net worth. Entry costs often begin around several $1,000,000, with larger yachts moving into the high seven figures and beyond. Annual running costs can easily cross several $100,000 and reach into seven figures for larger models. The financial reason someone buys Ferretti is credibility. A Ferretti tells the marina that the owner is not experimenting anymore. He understands the ecosystem. He may charter the boat part of the year. He may keep it in the Mediterranean. He may have a captain managing the real-world pain while he enjoys the illusion of frictionless leisure. But Ferretti also marks the ceiling of the normal rich person. It is still a yacht you can buy, finance, list, resell, and compare. It is luxury, but not sovereignty. It is the last step before the ocean stops being a purchase and becomes an institution. Sanlorenzo is where the buyer stops asking, "How big is it?" and begins asking, "Who designed it?" Founded in Italy, Sanlorenzo built its identity around made-to-measure yachts, architectural restraint, and the kind of luxury that wants to look inevitable rather than expensive. The typical buyer may be worth $100 million to $500 million. Entry costs can begin in the low tens of millions for serious yachts and climb dramatically for larger semi-custom and super yacht projects. Annual running costs can sit in the millions. Sanlorenzo is not bought by people who simply want to be seen. It is bought by people who want taste to become a barrier. The yacht communicates that the owner has moved beyond obvious symbols. He is not chasing the biggest hull at the dock. He is buying proportion, art, and design language. Financially, this is dangerous because taste can justify almost anything. A beach club becomes wellness. A custom staircase becomes architecture. A larger owner's suite becomes privacy. Every aesthetic choice becomes permanent cost. Sanlorenzo is the beginning of yacht ownership as identity construction, not transportation. Riva is heritage. Founded in the 19th century on Lake Iseo, Riva does not sell only boats, it sells memory. It sells old photographs, Italian lakes, movie stars, varnished wood, and the fantasy that wealth can be elegant instead of loud. The typical Riva buyer may be worth $50 million or far more. Some buy smaller Rivas as tenders or collectibles. Others buy larger modern yachts that cost millions to tens of millions. Running costs vary widely, but even a smaller Riva can become expensive when treated as a collectible object, not just a boat. The financial reason someone buys Riva is not utility, it is cultural signaling. A new money buyer buys size. A Riva buyer buys association. The object says the owner understands that status is not always measured in meters. Sometimes it is measured in restraint, history, and who recognizes the reference. That is why Riva sits between Millionaires and true old money. It can be purchased by a wealthy newcomer, but it cannot be fully understood by someone who only wants the biggest toy. Riva is a password brand. The wrong owner can afford it. The right owner knows why it matters. Benetti is the entry point into serious Italian mega yachts. With roots going back to the 19th century, Benetti has built everything from classic vessels to modern super yachts. It is one of the names that tells the market an owner has left the normal yacht showroom behind. The typical buyer may be worth $200 million to more than $1 billion. Serious Benetti projects can begin in the tens of millions and move past $100 million depending on length, volume, and customization. Annual running costs can climb from several million to more than $10 million. Benetti matters because it introduces the owner to industrial-scale hospitality. This is no longer a weekend platform, it is a staffed residence. The yacht may have a crew of 10, 20, or more. It has schedules, compliance, refit cycles, provisioning logistics, and management structures. The financial analysis is brutal. Benetti gives the owner a bridge into mega yacht culture without always requiring the blank check psychology of the German and Dutch full custom giants. It is still extraordinary wealth, but it can be systematized. It is a way for a decamillionaire or near billionaire to enter the world of serious yachts without building the entire universe from zero. Westport is American practical wealth. Founded in Washington state, Westport developed a reputation for composite construction, reliability, and yachts that make sense to owners who treat the vessel as an asset to operate, charter, and manage, rather than a sculpture. The typical buyer may be worth $100 million to $500 million. Large Westport yachts can cost from the high teens into the tens of millions. Annual running costs may land in the low to mid-millions, depending on crew, use, and location. The reason someone buys Westport is predictability. In an industry addicted to emotion, Westport appeals to owners who want fewer surprises. The layouts are proven. The platforms are known. The yachts can work well in charter markets. The maintenance logic is less mysterious than a one-off art project. That makes Westport the brand of rich people who still care about operational discipline. They are wealthy enough to buy a serious yacht, but not so reckless that they want every bolt to be a custom experiment. Westport separates the dreamer from the operator. Heesen is where speed meets serious money. Founded in the Netherlands, Heesen became known for high-performance superyachts, aluminum construction, and a willingness to build yachts that feel sharper, faster, and more technical than the floating palaces of older wealth. The typical Heesen buyer may be worth $300 million to several $1 billion. New builds can move from tens of millions toward more than $100 million. Annual operating costs can reach the high single-digit millions and beyond, especially when a support vessel is added. Financially, this is where the ocean becomes a supply chain. It appeals to the owner who wants technical performance, Dutch engineering, and a yacht that still feels like motion rather than real estate. But speed is expensive. Lightweight materials, powerful engines, and complex systems demand specialized maintenance. Heesen is a warning sign that the buyer has crossed into ultra wealth. A normal millionaire cannot survive this tier. The fuel, crew, refits, and technical expectations become too large. This is where the yacht begins to behave less like a luxury purchase and more like a private aerospace program floating on salt water. Amels and Damen Yachting represent the billionaire who does not just want a yacht, he wants a fleet. Dutch maritime history, semi-custom limited editions, full custom projects, expedition vessels, and support ships create a different ownership model. The yacht becomes the visible residence, the support vessel becomes the logistics department. The typical buyer is often worth hundreds of millions of dollars at minimum, but the true fleet buyer is usually a billionaire. Acquisition costs can range from tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars. Annual operating costs can reach the high single-digit millions and beyond, especially when a support vessel is added. Financially, this is where the ocean becomes a supply chain. A support vessel carries toys, crew, fuel, submarines, rescue equipment, and expedition gear. It keeps the main yacht clean, elegant, and guest-focused, but it also doubles complexity. 2 vessels mean 2 crews, 2 maintenance schedules, 2 insurance profiles, and twice the logistical exposure. This is not boating, this is private infrastructure. Amels and Damen Yachting serve owners who want distance, autonomy, and capability. They are not buying a floating mansion, they are buying operational reach. Oceanco is the tech billionaire fantasy made physical. Founded in the late 20th century and based in the Netherlands, Oceanco became associated with large, complex, forward-looking custom yachts. It is the yard for owners who want design ambition, unusual scale, and the feeling that their yacht belongs to the future. The typical Oceanco buyer is not merely rich, he is often worth billions. Projects can be estimated in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and the annual operating expense can easily reach tens of millions on the largest vessels. The famous example is Kourou, widely reported as a massive Oceanco-built sailing yacht associated with Jeff Bezos. The point is not celebrity, the point is scale. When a yacht becomes so large that it needs a support vessel, specialized routing, careful port planning, and constant attention from global media, the asset becomes both freedom and trap. Oceanco represents the paradox of modern billionaire privacy. The owner buys the yacht to escape attention, But the yacht is so extraordinary that it creates attention everywhere it goes. The financial cost is immense. The psychological cost may be worse. At this level, the boat does not just reveal wealth, it reveals the owner's relationship with invisibility. Feadship is Royal Dutch pedigree. The name itself comes from the first export association of Dutch shipbuilders, and within the superyacht world it carries a level of respect that does not need bright paint or theatrical branding. Feadship is one of the purest status signals because it is understood most deeply by people already inside the club. The typical Feadship buyer may be a billionaire, an old money dynasty, a technology founder who has learned discretion, or a family office buying not for applause but for permanence. Project costs can run from well over $100 million to several $100 million. Annual costs can reach tens of millions depending on size and complexity. Financially, Feadship is not about efficiency, it is about legitimacy. The buyer is paying for engineering reputation, custom execution, resale prestige, and the subtle fact that a Feadship does not need to explain itself. In a marina full of loud money, a Feadship can be quiet and still dominate. This is the difference between new money and institutional wealth. New money wants recognition from strangers. Feadship owners often want recognition only from the few people whose recognition matters. That is why Feadship is one of the clearest lines between millionaires and billionaires. A millionaire can admire it, a billionaire can commission it. Nobiskrug and Blohm and Voss represent the radical side of custom naval engineering. These are not brands for buyers seeking a polite white yacht that blends into the Mediterranean. These names are associated with the stranger edge of superyacht culture, angular profiles, experimental engineering, futuristic silhouettes, and projects that look less like leisure craft and more like naval statements. The typical buyer is not a normal rich person. He is often a billionaire, a state-connected fortune, or an owner willing to tolerate extreme complexity to build something no one else has. Costs can enter the hundreds of millions. Annual costs can become enormous because radical design rarely means simple maintenance. The financial reason someone chooses this world is ego disguised as engineering. A conventional yacht says, "I am wealthy." A radical custom yacht says, "I altered industrial reality to match my imagination." That statement is expensive before launch and even more expensive after delivery. There is also a hidden lesson here. Even elite shipyards are businesses exposed to cycles, financing stress, geopolitical changes, and order books. The yacht may look immortal, but the industrial machine behind it can be fragile. That is why the buyer at this tier must not only fund the yacht, he must survive the risks around the yacht. Lürssen is the apex predator. Founded in Germany and associated with some of the largest private yachts ever built, Lürssen is not merely a yacht brand, it is the industrial expression of sovereign-scale private wealth. This is the world of the longest yachts, the largest private vessels, the projects that become global news before the owner ever steps aboard. Lürssen has built yachts that are closer to cruise ships than pleasure craft. At this scale, the client is not choosing between models. The client is asking a shipyard to convert capital, secrecy, engineering, and ego into steel. The typical buyer is a billionaire, a royal family, a sovereign wealth-adjacent fortune, or a person whose liquidity is so vast that a $50 million annual operating budget does not threaten the rest of his life. A major Lürssen project can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Some estimates for the largest giga-yachts move far beyond that, and the annual expense can resemble the budget of a mid-sized corporation. This is where the 10% rule becomes terrifying. If a yacht costs $500 million, 10% is $50 million a year. That is before considering major refits, security upgrades, unusual fuel use, aircraft operations, tenders, submarines, legal structures, and the cost of being too large for half the places ordinary yachts can go. Lürssen separates billionaires from everyone else because the yacht is no longer a luxury item, it is a mobile state. It requires command structure, diplomacy, logistics, payroll, security, and constant technical support. A millionaire can buy a boat. A decamillionaire can own a yacht. A billionaire can keep a Lürssen alive without flinching. And that is the final distinction. The true cost of a giga-yacht is not the build. It is the fact that once created, it demands to be fed forever. The ocean exposes wealth because it removes excuses. On land, a person can fake status with debt, clothing, cars, houses, watches, and restaurants. At sea, every extra meter brings a bill. Every hidden system needs maintenance. Every guest cabin needs staff. Every mile requires fuel. Every beautiful surface is being attacked by salt, sun, vibration, humidity, and time.